Hello, 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 hello. Hi there. Hello there. Hello, hello. This is I, Clifford Bates. Welcome once again to the live stream. We're just now sending the message to everyone. The live stream's up. We're a little slow today because we had some problems. It wasn't recognizing it for some reason. And going. Live stream again. Welcome. Hi there. This is the Friday live stream. So again, I'm Clifford Bates. This is the infamous live stream. We'll have like maybe 4 or 5 people coming like this. Hello. Hi there. Ho there. Hello there. Boom. Well, we're group news. We started the Machiavelli's discourses videos. We're doing it chapter by chapter by chapter, like the politics. So therefore, they're kind of shortish, not really long, thank God. And we're going. It might take a whole year because there's significant. There's like 50. Book 1 will have 58, including the epistle dedicatory, the preface for book 1, and then 58 chapters in book 1, 58 numbered chapters in book 1, and then book 2 will have a preface but 32 numbered chapters, and book 3 will have 49 chapters but no preface. So if you add everything together, you get us. We might be by giving 5 days a week. We'll make progress. We've had a couple people say thank you for interested. So please get people watching the live stream. Not live stream, but the what do you call the releases? The video releases Monday through Friday. I had my last day of classes today. All my students were being good boys and girls. Well, 2 of the boys didn't show up today, so the master students who were doing their presentations today. They did. There were supposed to be 6 students. Only 4 showed up. The presentations were okay. I'm kind of an interrupter. I'm very much an interrupter with presentations in that sense. I did all the PowerPoints; they were okay. They didn't go too high in PowerPoints. It was a proper. They did a very good job in their PowerPoint stuff. It was and it was all on the Federalist Papers. It's the MA seminar on basically using the Federalist Papers and addressing it. And now the problem was that a lot of students on the specific thing that they did was okay, but they often didn't address higher concepts, and that was kind of a little so. And also some didn't. Some engaged in language that they didn't really understand their own language about things. They talk about the nature of communications and the nature of things, and they don't understand cognitive filters and things like that. They were talking about the question of how, media bubbles work, and how this was leading to increased polarization. Now, I'm sorry, this is a problem. This is the infamous chicken egg problem. Anyone who wants to say that social media has caused polarization I think it's the same problem when people say that violent video games lead to violent behavior. Okay, the problem here is that I'm always in the situation where to say that it causes it is problematic, but to say that there's no, in other words, the 2 things are correlations. In other words, we get 2 events happening. We get increased polarization and we get social media, the bubbles. Okay. Now, could the social media bubbles be a product? The question is, what is causing what? Are the social media bubbles a natural reaction to a polarized society? And therefore the question, or is the social media things create the polarization? And are they caused by, or they're creating? Now, it could be also an argument that things that are caused by something are created of it. Yes, something is created by a polarization, but then it can then magnify the polarization. This is the problem of, this is one of the things about social phenomena, in that a caused agent by what was being caused can give feedback to the thing that caused it, causing the feedback to causing the thing to get worse or either magnify or decline. Okay, this is the classic problem of feedback. And so, given human institutions and human structure, that's feedback, right? The feedback of the phenomena of the social bubbles can lead to increased polarization, or it can lead to decrease. That's not. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. But to say one causes the other, it's going to be problematic. It's this chicken egg problem, right? The infamous chicken egg problem about this. And I think this is one of the things one needs to think about in people who talk about the dangers of social media. The social media thing is a more complicated situation. In many ways, social media was a mechanism to control the internet. Because what it did was it was going to be a filter. Because the internet, the pure internet, would be, if you, in other words, this is pure information. This is the big problem. All information requires filters, cognitive filters. Our senses, we have, in other words, our senses and the way our mind works and the constructions of how we understand stuff requires levels of cognitive filter. And if we have a lot of information, what we get is this noise. So therefore, what we do is we put these arbitrary cognitive filter devices. And this is what, editors, this is what has been done for us in the area of the printed press. The era of the printing press and the writing of the creation of national media by printing, because of the telegraph, the steam press. Because before the steam press, you couldn't produce. In other words, you couldn't produce enough to do large distribution networks, and therefore you needed transportation. Also, so therefore you couldn't cover large national. And how could you do it 100 miles away or 200 miles away? How could you easily have the same newspaper or the headlines doing it without telegraph and radio, okay, or telephone, right? So therefore, you telegraph the highlights. You'd have a situation where you lineograph the cover page, and goes over here, and it gets printed out there, and then they put it on the printer, and then they put it with the steam press, and therefore you could have things like a mass distribution of large papers, and therefore you could have newspaper chains, okay, which the Hearst chain, and then was it the Hearst chain and Reuters and these. I mean, first there were just information networks, but the Hearst had tons of newspapers, and that these chains became the first mechanisms of mass media. And then what happened was, because of their sales and that, they could hire journalists and the creation of professional journalism class. And this is basically in the 19th century, at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century, the emergence of a professional class of journalists. This is a new thing. Before that, the owner of the press would just recruit, people to put information on. So therefore, if you look at the history of journalism, of the presses, before the 19th century, most presses were either controlled by governments or the political rulers and those who did it. But if they weren't, they were controlled by owners who owned the press and found would usually advance the issues that the press wanted to have advanced. So therefore, this is why we have to be very, anyone who wants to say, oh, we live in a time of, no, it's, in many ways, In the 1990s up until the early thousands, until the rise of social media, we were regressing back to the era of the early press, the early printing press, before the creation of large networked through the steam presses and the news networks, and what do you call it, the chains. The chains were big chains who could produce good quality product, could mass produce, and therefore outcompete the local guy. The local guy couldn't do it. Again, this is the nature of the market, right? Because I could produce stuff at such a higher rate, more efficiently. I could then, because I could saturate larger market sways, advertisers used to pay them more. And because the advertisers paid them more, they could then hire journalists. Whereas the smaller smaller market papers couldn't do that, and therefore couldn't necessarily pay them to the degree that they did. And therefore, the problem was that the quality of the writing, the quality of news, and the fact that they had access to larger distributions, but also larger information networks, thus gave them the ability to compete more effectively with smaller market presses. And that what happened with this was that the larger presses started, sooner or later, you couldn't really, in any major city, it wasn't feasible to have anything more than one or two newspapers per major city. And then within the region, then the chains, I would own like five, people would, it was simply just by owning a chain of newspapers, I could, increase the efficiency of making money through advertising. I could give my advertising market, guaranteeing them these wide square market. I could then raise and have a wide network of journalists, subsidized journalism. In other words, all these papers will share. There was overseas. In other words, I could get a little bit from every paper to subsidize journalists abroad. So therefore, in other words, what I've done is I've created a professional class of journalism. And this all happened in the 1880s, 1890s, early 20th century, 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And as they became more professional, they became more middle class. As they became more professionals and higher salary, they became more middle class. What happened with this was the decline of printed press. And this was a product of twofold. One was the rise of TV medium, cable news, the change of cable news. Cable news did what? I mean, before cable news, which was 24/7 hour news coverage, regular TV network news, TV and network news relied heavily on newspapers to break the news. Often what they would do is just retell for the TV audience what the papers already did. Okay. TV didn't break news per se. This was really done by breaking news was done by the journalists, the press journalists. Like Watergate, Watergate's a story was broken by the Washington Post reporters, the two Bernstein and the Pentagon Papers were done through the New York Times and the Washington Post. There's lots of stories that major newspapers broke the stories, and they got the information. They broke the news, and they did it. Now, of course, what happens? You could also get local TV. In other words, a local TV show with an investigative reporter could do that, but the newspaper was probably going to get it first, because the newspaper would get it first and usually had greater access. If they were able to do it, they were able to do it. Now, local TV stations maybe have a dedicated reporter who would do that, or had an issue to grind, and they got their reputation on that issue. But it was more likely that newspaper would have a wider range of reporting access, and had a wider staff of reporters doing things, and more likely to break the stories. And because they would break in the old days, up until the 1980s, you often had two times, maybe three times a day release of a major paper. Okay, so you had a fundamental nature of news in that sense, in the American experience. You'd have the morning paper, you'd have maybe a special edition in the midday, and an evening edition. Okay, that was the standard 3 times a day. So that when TV came on, the evening news were often following the information from the evening edition. And there was no breaking news in that sense. Now with cable news, with CNN's, Cat Turner's and CNN, with 24-hour news on all news originally, the nature of CNN over time changed. It increasingly people got bored with the nonstop news, and they had to diversify their presentation to bring in infotainment and other things. And that was the change to that. And then as other competitors happened, like CNBC first came in there with market news, market information. That was the first one. In other words, the network started to say, okay, we're going to compete on cable with that. But still, it was ABC, NBC, the big three, ABC, American Broadcasting, which was the youngest. The big two, Broadcasting, which was from radio days, was Columbia Broadcasting Service and National Broadcasting Service, CBS and NBC. These were the two big radio broadcasters, and it was their network that TV networks, news networks emerged out of. The radio news network of the 1930s and 40s, late 1930s, basically late 20s, early 30s, and early 40s, with things like Pathé News Service on video, movies, and then things like Reuters and news services, Reuters, and I forget what the other news service was. These news services initially just fed things to papers, usually, in other words, local papers who didn't necessarily have people abroad that would pay Reuters to give them stories, and therefore the Reuters story they would pay fees to get to the Reuters. So small, even the local big city presses would hike on to would pay up to Reuters and other things. The New York Times cooperated with I forget not Weekly Standard. I forget the newspaper, the International Herald Tribune, International Herald Tribune. This was a kind of New York Times International Herald Tribune. The International Herald was a paper for the overseas, and the New York Times was and therefore they cooperated. In fact, the International Herald Tribune cooperated with the Washington Post. New York Times been watched for a long time. A lot of papers, Washington Post, New York Times, subsidized and carried. All of a sudden, New York Times overall carried this in the 1980s and 90s and early thousands. The Herald Tribune was being wholly subsidized by the New York Times. I think other papers tried to help, but they were in trouble. By early thousands, early thousands, Wash Post was bought out by Bezos and gang of Amazon. I think someone else before Amazon, but it was someone before Amazon, and then Amazon guy bought it out. The Washington Post. The New York Times, which I forget, Salzburger's family sold it out to the guy in Mexico, the Mexican millionaire, in around the early mid-thousands. And the same thing with a lot of major papers. The old traditional pieces could not compete. And that was because of the failure of, in other words, advertising went down the thing. Because what happened was the marketing advertising just wasn't as useful. And the new advertising, the internet, people would quit going to newspapers. There was a move away from newspapers and away from normal television as the internet became more and more useful to read for people. And that the internet was the basic change. And this is the media, this is the fundamental media revolution that happened. And why am I talking about this for? Because I think this is important to understand that we have to understand that the media revolution was a big situation. This is where Mark McLuhan is absolutely right. Marshall McLuhan and his idea that the medium is the message. The medium, how we get our information, informs the way the messages, what the message is, and the political structure of that message. The internet was a kind of liberating moment. The original internet. It was what? It was a decentralized situation without filters. In other words, you could find. Now, the first attempt at the problem with just without this was finding stuff. So the first thing that they came up there was the creation of search engines, and the fact that there were in the early '99 and throughout '99 up until 2000, there was this plethora of competition of different search engines. There was, Alta Vista, of course, Yahoo, with the news service and things like that. There was MS, Microsoft, NBC, together with Hotmail, together with their own thing. There was Alta Vista. What is it? There was, oh my God, they were like Yahoo, but there was Yahoo. There was, there was like 20 or 30 smaller, basically listservs. Some odd ones like Ask Jeeves. I remember Ask Jeeves, which was Jeeves from P.D. Royhouse character. You asked him questions and it was like a search engine. Many of these with the rise of Yahoo, rise of Google. What is Google? When I don't know. I'm not a big. I'm going to ask the computer question. Late 1990s, early 2000s. It was, the original Google was late 1990s. We have to remember that Google then created Chrome for Windows in 2008. Chrome now is the most dominant browsers in these things. In the 1990s, the browser wars, Netscape, which then ironically becomes Foxfire or Firefox. Netscape and Microsoft and Netscape, Internet Explorer. And Internet Explorer was sold with Windows programs, original Windows, and because it was sold with Windows 95, it was seen as kind of an unfair competition to things like Netscape, the infamous Netscape wars, and the way Microsoft used ways to buy out and destroy smaller competition. You forget that Excel was not Lotus 1-2-3 was really the first spreadsheet programs that were more widely used in the late 80s and early 90s than was Google's product or Microsoft products. Microsoft then and Google came to ultimately challenge it. Right? This is the way the nature. And I remember when I was going to college writing my dissertation, my in the 90s, writing my PhD. I did it on WordPerfect. I prefer WordPerfect. I think WordPerfect is still the best word processing program for terms of editing and correcting and dealing with things. It was wonderful, but it became unaffordable. It became so extremely costly, and so because of it was only hired to certain law firms and professional things. In other words, whereas Microsoft was able to market it in a way to get everything done, and they stole and imitated most of it. So most people would stay. It was easier just to buy the whole professional pack. And then when they started about a decade ago, when they decided to offer it as a service, yearly service, okay, this changes the nature of the product offerings. And that you were never really owning anything, you were renting it, really, right? You were only really renting programs. This made things difficult for bigger, smaller companies. They could not update. They seemed to be outdated. They weren't able to offer the constant updates and things, and therefore that what would happen is, as this weird connection between, in other words, by updating the thing, they can do things with the programming and the that speed things up and make it better and interconnected, and then that demands more. In other words, and whereas the older programs just wouldn't, they were now too backwards and not able. In other words, they couldn't work on the new systems. Okay, so therefore, this is the irony of the internet in that sense, but also the way telecommunications. But let's go back to the browsers. The browsers and the browser war and the search engines were a way to add as a filter to allow us to. We would be our own filter. We would put commands in it. We would put Bayesian logical concerns to a search, and it would search the thing. The problem with this was often you'd have to go through a lot of junk. You'd have to go through a lot of junk. Now, all of a sudden, Google and Yahoo, all of a sudden, they said, let's make money. This is around 2000. I think this is late 99, 2000, after Y2K. The Y2K, fear, we've got everything going to crash, the world's going to collapse. That didn't happen. But this allowed them to basically, the tech world extorted billions of dollars, multi-billions of dollars from government, industry, things like this to prepare them for Y2K. And because most of the business world and government world and a management world were completely ignorant morons in terms of computers, they didn't understand this. They were conned. And they were so afraid that we're going to lose our clients. We're going to have all my services crash. My hospitals are going to collapse. Oh my God, I gotta pay these companies, consultants and firms, so we can avoid Y2K. I know I was there. I used to get in trouble by saying this is not going to happen. Oh no, it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. You're panicking for really no reason. They're promising you that they're scaring you, and you don't understand the technology. And because you don't understand the technology, you listen to them, and they're doing this knowing you don't know, so they can basically get you to give them lots of R&D money. And this is what happened in the Y2K. That it was basically a overselling of things, of promises, and promising people new services that allowed for R&D of things. But that also did what? It gave advantage to certain companies. They got a whole bunch of money, like big service companies, got a whole bunch of money, and they were able to basically get a monopoly over the marketplace they were in. And Microsoft is one of the big ones. Microsoft will be one of the big ones. IBM almost died in this point. They were there. They were competing. Oracle was there. All the big companies. They were there, and they were kind of trying to fight into this moment. Older programming languages that most of the old computers, old mainframes were operating on had to, they were paying people like ridiculous sums of money to do Fortran and COBOL. Now, people forget that after Y2K and the new computers, the new world, after Y2K, then C++ and all the new programs, right? All of a sudden, everyone knows Fortran. What's Fortran? What's COBOL? What's Fortran? Oh my God, what's going on there? But they were paying people hundreds of thousands. Anyone who had the older experience of Fortran and this in 1998, 1999, they were getting $100,000 offers. Signing bonuses. Okay, and they were often being driven away from their former employers to firms dealing with the consulting of Y2K issues, and this was a big money marketing thing. So I lost. I came to Europe, and that's when I came to Europe. I left. I was working in a hospital. I was working as a I got a job in the IT section of a thing called Lifespan New England. I saw the con jobs that the IT consultants were doing on these things. We were doing things like common vocab. They were merging hospitals together and merging IT staffs and merging systems and doing things like having you wanted to have a uniform system of information from at radiology, X-rays, billing care, and because these things often had different vocabulary in each program, and each system may have a unique vocabulary to it. You needed a common vocabulary engine that would be able to translate. In other words, you can interface different programs and intersystems, and they would be able to do this. I worked on the common vocabulary engine as well as a database maintenance assistance to this. My pattern recognition ability was like, oh, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. No. So I saw that for the scam it was. They used to say, well, you don't have a computer degree, so how do you know about this? I said, yeah, I don't have a computer degree, but I hung out with computer people. I know this stuff. I know forensics computers, and I know these kind of stuff. I don't have the degree. I have experience by working with people who do this stuff. So don't tell me about this nonsense. This is silly. And my response has always been that anyone who looks and understands the way the internet happened at that period, remember the wild days of the internet. It was you went on there and you could find anything you want. It was and that the search engines were the mechanism, but you did it. But the problem with this was what? The same thing that happened with media presses, the newspapers, happened with the search engines. The search engines the companies that had more money could invest programming and quality and service speed to improve the quality of the things, and they started buying out the smaller service. And this becomes you had two very smart people tied with Stanford at Google that merged to be the big program, and that this led to the rise of Google at the end of 99, 2000s. They expanded their ability to do other things, and then all of a sudden, with the rise of Chrome as a browser, as a Windows browser, competing in 2008 with Microsoft, it was all of a sudden people who preferred Chrome for the Microsoft. But then what happened was Microsoft didn't like them. Try looking at Microsoft Windows and how Windows dislikes Chrome. Go look at the code features, real codes. Go look at the what we call that, the task manager bar sometime, and look at the way how complicated your tasks management and operating system things are when you run when you have to use Chrome, and how complicated every time you have a link in things, it slows and what it does is that it basically says Windows, again with my antivirus programs. What has Windows done with Windows Defender? It has basically destroyed the antivirus industry, because now why do you have to go get an antivirus program? We got Windows Defenders. Okay, Windows Defender does what? It makes, in fact, it doesn't like you when you run your virus programs. I used to have AVG for 20 years. I got AVG when I first came to this part of the world. And starting about 5 years ago, Windows started attacking AVG, treating it as a infection, slowing the computer down. So I had to remove my AVG from I still have a contract for that this is my tablet. I still use AVG for my tablet, but I can't use it for I still like AVG. AVG was a great system for antivirus and maintaining things, but you can't do it. In other words, Microsoft made it almost impossible for you to do things like this. Oh yeah, screen names. Wild days allowed screen names, anonymity, and things like this. I understand this is the old days like that. But we have to understand what this is. Before social media, the centralization of this came with the algorithm wars based on the search engines. And the competition amongst search engines was a Darwinian competition of the one who could do it more effectively. Really, Darwinian competition. And Google won. Why did Google win? Because Google won because it was able to buy out. It was able to do certain things, and once it produced more products, it could do other things. Microsoft didn't really do a good job. Microsoft dropped the ball. It basically didn't really do anything on. It decided to focus more on programs, and gave up its attempt to do anything on, on what we call the information. I mean, remember, even MSNBC kind of like died out and went to kind of what it was. You have to remember Salon and those magazines that were done by MSNBC. Salon, their search engine structure, or everything, even Hotmail. We forget Hotmail. They bought Hotmail out from the thing and was connected with their MS News, MSN.com, right? MicrosoftNews.com, right? We forget MSN was a big attempt by Microsoft to kind of get into the information and compete with Google. Yahoo was the big thing. Yahoo started buying, Yahoo Mail bought out Rocket Mail. I still have my Rocket Mail. I still have my Rocket Mail account, okay? So Rocket Mail, Yahoo bought Rocket Mail. Rocket Mail was one of the first web-based email services that were very good. It was much better than Hotmail. It was much more coherent and didn't have the spam that Yahoo Hotmail did. And then there was like USA.net. That was a latecomer. Then there's Alta Vista Mail. There were all these different, there was, like I said, I was in the 1990s, I was building websites. So my old websites are still available on, Tripod and Tripod, which was bought out by Lycos. I remember the old days used to be able to get 4 or 5 megabytes. 5 megabytes websites for every valid email you had. So therefore you get like 20 emails, and then you had all these things. That's the old wild days. But the nature of, in other words, by the early thousands, as we went into our post-Y2K, what happened with this was that there was kind of a move away from Yahoo to Google. Google started dominating because the quality of the search engine, the algorithm that they had to be able to get correct information, to find information, was the Google search engine was outstanding. It was much easier. It was, you had to go through more. In other words, the older Alta Vista and that originally it was Alta Vista was probably one of the better search engines, but by the time Google came, Google started beating it, and then all of a sudden Yahoo was slightly worse than Alta Vista, but then all of a sudden Google just beat everyone. It was just you wanted to find something, it helped you find it very quickly. Now around early 2000s, and all of a sudden Yahoo and that started selling to marketers, selling this like you can. If you want your website to get found first, we'll sell you space on the list. So the first, you get recommended websites. You see this to this very day. Yahoo recommends websites. So that is paid for. So much of your, ironically, therefore, Yahoo and the search engine company started to basically become pay-for-play operations to find search engines. And that's why you get a lot of junk sometimes when you search things, because it's been, spammers and companies who want to make money and marketers and things like that. You use that as the mechanism to kind of try to get traffic to certain sites so that people get certain things. And this is frustrating in that sense. So therefore, a lot of, in other words, the nature of the network became more noise oriented. Now, why am I talking about this? This is a good. I'm talking about this today. Talking about the old internet in that sense. It's around 2008. There was old social media. We can say, well, there was always. What does that mean? I forget. Oh, what was that stupid website that was not LinkedIn, but oh, come on. There was before Facebook. There was these kind of social host sites. You put your you post your pictures and you put your blinks. I forget the name of this thing before Facebook rise. But Facebook by 2008, 2010, Facebook dominated. Why? What Facebook did was network situations of like social networks that I knew my friends. I would know my friends. I would like associate friends. And we would self-associate. It wouldn't be I would just be out there in the blank thing. I would network with other friends. And what I posted on, my friends would see what I posted, and I would see what my friends posted. And therefore, this created what? This created a micro market. People with the same likes would like each other's stuff. And therefore, it was a mechanism by which then, as these associational networks emerged, this provided a way for marketing. And this is why I think in many ways Zuckerberg was right not to take advertising right away. I think he waited like almost a decade before he did any real advertising. Why? Because he wanted to build a network and allow the intersociational interconnections of people binding, that they would create communities and networks of people, and that therefore you could just look at the data and then track the data, and then say, well, wait a minute, I want to target these people, so I will. So when they actually did finally bring in advertisements in it, this would allow for micro-targeting advertisements, and therefore this would do this. So therefore, what did social media do? The rise of social media was the return to the what? The algorithms on search engines combined with social media did what? This allowed for re-centralization of information. In other words, once you had algorithms running the search algorithms, and then once you had the original social media, and actually it happened in search engines first. Search engines were the first things that the big corporations controlled first, and they did it for what? Advertising sake, and they did it to push things. Okay, that's what they were pushing things. Now, what ironically social media discovered was that that didn't really well. That was pushing already, and what the social media networks did was it created self-organic networks. By organic, I mean naturally occurring emergent networks, people that created themselves, not artificially imposed from above. Would then you would know what their likes are, you would know what their things are, so what you tell them, you don't have to tell everyone else. You can micro target them. I mean, that was the lesson of what happened in 2015, 2016, 2016, both with Brexit and the 2016 election. And this is, I mean, that's why you go watch the Brexit movie. Go watch the Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch, or how I say his name, about where he plays Benedict Benedict C plays. Oh, come on, I'm talking about the British guy. It's gonna drive me crazy. Who is the British guy? Dominic Cummings. Dom Cummings. Cummings discovered that the social media information things of the companies who were basically tied to Facebook all the data algorithm companies, the two or three of them, and Cambridge Analytica was one of them. They wanted to use they were going to use the Brexit vote as a way to test their targeting mechanism. Now, Obama started that originally. Obama used the 2008 election of Obama. He used the early origins of social media and e-marketing and the internet. Remember, social media. 2008, the social media was new. By 2012, it was a little stronger. So the 2012 election, you had a much more advanced social marketing campaign by Obama. And you can see the way he shifted the Obama campaign shifted from a centrist to a lack of centrist one in those times, and how he moved more radical and was able to target those young communities and activist communities so that he could more effectively do his messaging in that sense. This is why, we have to understand that the Obama campaign was the first campaign to use, in this sense, social media, the early stages of social media. But then what happened in 2016 is the wrong people. The argument is the wrong people, like, Brexit and the populists, and in other words, all of a sudden, the guys we don't want having anything. Again, this is the problem of what happened. Then what happened was then they realized that the other side could use it also, so therefore they had to destroy it, or they had to rig it, and that's when the government started putting, the left, the Democratic Party, and the political at many levels of government put pressure on the social media companies to weigh the algorithm, expel, purge conservative voices, purge people, silence things, skew the algorithm to, because in other words, if you let the algorithm work, this could be a dangerous. If you let it work naturally, then forces we don't want to win could win. Okay, and therefore, what happened was a return to the. See, this is the problem. To understand the 1950s, 60s, and 70s media, there was a liberal bias in it. The mainstream networks, starting in the late 40s, 50s of the early broadcasting, were liberals. They were New Deal Democrats. And the liberal bias, Roger R. Murrow and that crap. And then you had the whole emergence of the American media, TV, the rise of TV. Again, most of the anchors were liberals. Maybe you had one or two who weren't liberals, and maybe over time, someone who was a liberal became a little distant. Like, remember, someone who could have been a Truman supporter would appear to be conservative in the 1960s. Okay, someone who was a Kennedy supporter might be seen. Kennedy's position on foreign policy was far more to the right than the other Democrats basically in 68 and in 72. Okay, so you have to understand the nature of these things changed in fundamental ways. The Democratic Party was captured by the anti-war. The Democratic Party in America was captured by the anti-war movement. By 70, the election of 72 was a disaster. 68 was a huge disaster. Their candidate was basically they drove out because what's his name? Johnson was going to run in 68. He was driven out by Robert Kennedy. Now, Robert Kennedy gets killed in California primary, but he's already Johnson left. And who replaced Johnson was Herbert Humphrey. And Herbert Humphrey, in other words, the anti-war movement, what happened was the anti-war with Eugene McCarthy. Eugene McCarthy was really the anti-war movement. And RFK came in there and stole the anti-war wing of the party. pure Kennedy opportunism. Okay, using the Kennedy charisma to co-opt the situation. And therefore, what happened in '68 was a weird situation. Then Kennedy gets killed by Saran in California. Now, it's not a CIA plot. He was a Muslim, or I think a Muslim radical cuckoo guy, who then targets him because of sympathies, this idea of the radical, this idea of, okay, Kennedys were going to be hypocrites. They were hypocrites and not things. So therefore, they were going to tie them against. They didn't trust the radicals. Thought we would blow up both, both parties and that stuff. This is the idea. The revolution was going to come. Third World Revolution was going to come. The Saran was a weird guy, clearly mentally unstable in this. And this is the problem. Usually, these kind of assassins are mentally unstable, and they're actualized through actualized through outside forces that are having it. The outside forces put agendas on things and spin their stories, both left and right, can spin their things, and these people, being unstable as they are, they get hooked up into it, and they either come from a left-wing perspective or a right-wing perspective. What's his name? JFK's assassin and RFK's assassin, both tied to left-wing causes, radical left-wing causes, and were easily driven to these extremes by their instability. Okay, and they can be, you can be still very intelligent, but still completely psychopath, as the Unabomber clearly indicates. Ted Kaczynski, right? So let's think about this for a second. The nature of the internet, social media was basically it wasn't the social media itself. Social media could be if the algorithm is not interfering with the bottoms up. Now, there's two ways you can get information: from a central point, top down, or from emergent mechanisms. Emergent information networks, which we use, in other words, we use algorithms to emergent structures to allow you choose your search. You choose your search. You choose the people you want to go get information, and you get their information. And they know what your like patterns are from based on your preferences and your like. Therefore, they can say, well, these people like these like this, these people like this. So therefore, then we will, it will go like to like, dislike to dislike, and we'll choose a basically from the bottom up. Now, what a top-down model does is, as we know what you're doing, well, we don't want you to, because I know you're saying this, we're not going to let you tell these other people this information. We're going to block you. We're going to shadow ban you. We're not going to allow you to have your views spread out in the system. Second of all, we're going to flood you with counter message, hoping you either do two things. One is, oh, you're wrong, and like this. And if you keep on posting things we think breaks our rules, we're going to silence you or remove you. Right? This is the classic thing that happened starting in 2016, 2017, 18, late 17, early 18, when they did the purging. They used the argument of Facebook, YouTube started purging people because why? Oh my God, the people buying advertising, they don't want to be associated with this. So they use the argument of advertisers not wanting to be associated with controversial things, which they never do. Advertisers used to hate having something controversial because this is the surest way to kill, lose a sale, lose a customer, annoy people. So, of course, that certain topics are going to be controversial because why? Because there's going to be Twitter mobs going at Twitter, which originally was basically a lynch mob under Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey turned, instead of being a free speech platform, Twitter under Dorsey was basically a lynch mob, a left-wing lynch mob that could be immediately, it was a networking mechanism of the left, the radical left and the professional left, that they were associationalizing in a way, and then controlling and policing who could be said what and how they would be said, and then they would mob up against people. Okay, that was the thing, and I think this is why Elon changed that in that sense. It destroyed that. And without Twitter, they don't have, the left no longer has a organizational hub that they can basically, organize the lynch mob to go after people, the cancel mob, to put pressure on things. It became more and more difficult. Now they still have a lot of institutional aspects that they still can put pressure on, because they won. In other words, they used socials like Twitter to get. They were already there on the kind of Gramsci-esque march, the long leftist march through the institutions. Getting in the 1980s, they got the universities. By late 90s and early thousands, they got the corporations, the law firms, the civil society organizations, you name it, businesses, and they could by mid 2000s, late 2000s, early 10s, they were in charge of the corporate boards. And then all these things like ESG, DEI, all these things became HR-oriented structures. In other words, human resources were completely captured by the radical left and progressive movement. And therefore, and then people through HR. In other words, the corporate boards and these people just wanted to quiet. They wanted to be left alone. So they just gave in. They just let them, promoted them, moved them. And that was the nature of why the patterns of what we had happened. So, social media, in other words, the social media was bullied into cooperating with the political things. Why? Because it was easy. Because the political class could simply say to that, okay, you're a publisher and you can be sued for slander. If they gave them exemptions under the law, legal exemptions and protections against slander and other things that they would have lost and been open up to lawsuits and completely destroyed. They would not be able to operate. So therefore, understand, this is why they could be easily manipulated. And they were easily intimidated. People like, and this is why it's even amazing that someone like Musk, he doesn't care. He is right now strong enough and wealthy enough that he does not care. And therefore, he would stand up to them and he can fight against them. And then made allies politically. He moved to someone like Trump because it was the only way to stop the people trying to destroy him. Okay, you understand? This is how this kind of situation works. And now he's been awakened in this sense. He's been not red-pilled, but awakened to he knows that they're going to try to destroy what he wants to do. And he knows that from this point, there's a tactical alignment between Trump and the forces of the populist nationalist right that is an ally. And they might disagree on a lot of things. They might, the MAGA they disagree about, the visas, about bringing in outside people for skills to come in work for, the MAGA looks at that and says, no, we should be not importing skilled workers into America. Maybe the super highest level skilled labor, but that's not how those visas are working in reality. So again, this led to a problem because Musk is looking at this from the point of view of bringing in very skilled people to do this. But at the same time, the problem is that this is not how these visas are actually being done. They're bringing in medium to low skilled people to come in to subsidize for almost nothing. So therefore, you have a slave labor force. Right? This is the same thing. This is why that stupid bimbo bishop. I love that black woman's line. The BBB. I'm not going to say what she's called. That the bitch of she BBB. That black woman did a fantastic destruction of the woman bishop who went after Trump at prayer day. But the poor people. But then these immigrants do our gardening in our dishes. Isn't that that was the most racist thing? This white middle class liberal who lives in a bishop, who's only a bishop because no men would do it anymore because they're not paid enough. Therefore, she doesn't get that much money from being a bishop. So therefore, you can't really start a family. You have to be this is the same thing in academia. Women started to take control of these professions, and what happens to that? They're subsidized by spouses, or that they come from a wealthy family. So she lives in a ridiculous. I don't know how much her house that she lives in, this bishop lives in. She doesn't live. She's part of the one fucking percent of the country. She's not. She doesn't really respect. She's a Chardonnay told in a social activist, wannabe Karen, blue-haired, pink-haired cat lady type. Lesbian, maybe lesbian with a fellow partner. This is the kind of crowd that this bishop is. She's not a real Christian bishop. Instead of preaching the message of Christ, she preaches the message of social justice. And therefore, this was embarrassing. And in fact, this is what I think, people say, well, Trump shouldn't have gone there in the first place. No, I think Trump should have went. Because by exposing this, the whole world is saying, what? This is sick. Die. Die, Bishop, die. Die, Church. Episcopal Church of the United States, die. In fact, what I would argue is people should start suing. The original family should start suing all the trusts for all these wonderful churches run by Episcopals and say, you Episcopal Church, you have all this money, you have these endowment. Your endowment was there to spread the message of Christ, not spread LGBTQ crap. So you're no longer doing what those people gave you that money for that reason. You're not doing it. So the government can take all that money. The families are dead. We're going to take that money away from you. We'll pay the debt with it. Bye-bye, church. Because the churches are using that money to what? To build social housing and do things like to engage in the kind of subsidizing of immigrants. Look at the scandal of what's happening at Catholic charities. All these Catholic bishops poo-pooed the Trump administration for. Well, why they're doing that is because they're getting millions and millions of dollars from left-wing causes and even government money into the charities to do DEI and immigrants, sneak in illegal immigrants. This is what the church is involved in child trafficking. Well, we can always say the church always was involved in child trafficking, right? Those bishops and priests, like that, little boys and girls, and now it appears that they're doing it in a wide scale. I'm being shockingly annoying. My Catholic friends will say, "Why are you saying this? This is anti-Catholic." Well, I'm a Protestant. I'm sorry, I'm a prod. We have our own problems with left-wing crackpots, but they say that the fish rot from the top down. The church is a rotting fish. When all your bishops are captured by these people, they're saying all this social justice crap for decades. They're on the wrong side. The bishops won't condemn. Oh, the Mormons! I don't want to even deal with the Mormons. Please, I have Mormon friends that they'll get mad at me with Mormons. The Mormons have also gone down this way because, again, what happens? The wealthy and the elites, the people who the scions and the big people, they go to elite universities. Even Brigham Young University has hired these Harvard professors and things like that, who now will pass on. They'll have the gay lesbians and things like that. So, this is, Mormons were never really Christians in the first place. Remember that. They're heresy. With they are not Christians. They might say we're children's, okay, they use the name Christ. Their Christ is as valid as the Christ of the Muslims. I always joke about the Mormons as they are the American Muslims, without the jihad. American Mormons are just American Muslims without jihad. They have the same attitudes, except they don't have the anti-pork fetish, but they have the anti-caffeine, alcohol, and things like that. Things kind of attitudes. Okay, enough. Okay, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but again, the bishop was a perfect representative of what's wrong in this sense, and the social media saying, okay, you do that kind of thing, and then people say, okay, this is ridiculous. Okay, so the nature of social media, is this a bubble? Is this information? This is, again, go back to the point that the student was trying to say, well, social media bubbles create partisanship. Well, no, the partisanship was there. Social media only reveals the partisanship. In other words, the idea is, do you really want, by masking, the argument is that, well, if you allow these people to say things, they'll get more followers. My attitude about that is, if you let Nazis really speak openly, and you give them, and you shine light on them, well, that's the more Amish. The Amish also believe, Amish are weird. They believe in hard work, but also they fear that the technology is going to leave them away from the nature and God's dependency upon God. It's not that electricity and other technologies, gifts of these. It's they feel that by these things are taking you away from God's creation, and so the Amish are weird. The Amish are basically looking at technology and thinking at it. They're Luddites in this way. They're similar to the Luddites. Mr. Lovell, thank you for your points. Amish are basically, 18th century Christians from Germanic states, the Anabaptists, who came there and wanted to preserve their way of farming, way of life, and didn't want to modernize. The Mennonites were less, they were more, the Mennonites shared their values, but were more open to technology, okay? So again, this is the nature of immigration, the type of immigration when they came to America, they came in that stuff. Christian religions came from the Bronze Age? No. Christian is more problematic because Christianity emerges from combination of things. It's Roman Empire. The modern Christianity emerges from the Roman Empire and Charlemagne and that. And it was an imperial institution. This is the European Christianity. And Byzantine Empire too. This is it goes in two directions. It goes to Orthodoxy, one direct. Roman capture of Christianity and morphing of it under Charlemagne goes in two directions. The Caesio-Papism of Orthodoxy, and then the collapse of the empire and the church being left alone, and therefore the dual system of, the rise of the new emperor created by the Western emperor, created by the church, and then created the duality of the two spheres, right? So you have the religion as we know it, the Orthodoxy versus Catholic split. And then within the Catholic world, the Roman Catholic world, you have the Reformation, due to the contradictions within the way the church behaved. Again, remember, this is Machiavelli makes this a big point, that the church, the papacy was the only institution there to help create the empire, but then it got into a fight with the empire. And it was with, as Machiavelli says in The Prince and Discourses, it was the church sided with the southern cities, wishing to gain the cities trying to gain independence from the emperor. But they were, it was and the tension between the emperor and the new emperor and the church. This is the big thing. And then the emperor decided that the church becoming, because of Pippin, remember what happens? Pippin and the father of Charlemagne grants to the church, frees the Pope, gives him the papal states as this. And then the church, the Pope becomes a prince. A Pope becomes the prince. The Pope becomes a prince in terms of this. And therefore becomes a temporal power. And once he becomes a temporal power, he has competing interests, temporal political interests against the emperor. And therefore they want, and they wanted to, and he wanted to, again, Machiavelli does this great of how he prevented a unification, unlike what was happening in England, Spain, and France, of an idea of a dynasty unifying rule under a national banner. You could not have that in Italy or Germany because of the church. The church's interests were too strong, and they did the various church interests refused to allow political centralization because they feared, because they were not, none of the church leaders were strong enough, either in Germany or in that they could do it, and because they couldn't do it, they would get everyone else. They would cooperate with the weaker parties to prevent anyone who could do it. Okay, this is what's true in the church in Italy and also the church in Germany. And this, the way the church corrupted the Germans, led to the rise of Luther, because of the church was being, the German people were being looted for the sake of the papacy and to the cardinal archbishops and Mainz and other places who were using, because they were able to use the church to use the authority of the papacy and the things, was basically just looting people's ignorance of fear of the indulgences as a mechanism to the selling of indulgences, which was never designed as a mechanism for revenue to be sold. The church used it as an extraordinary tax to generate money to pay for St. Peter's and other the Cardinal Archbishop of Mainz and the other Cardinal Archbishop of Cologne. These Cardinal Archbishops used the indulgences, the sales of the Roman, the papal indulgences, as a mechanism to generate money to finance their situations, and not having to rely on direct taxation of the people. So they use the church as a mechanism to basically get money to pay for their endeavors and their endeavors. So, I mean, this is what led to the rise of the Lutheran Reformation in that sense. So this is, I don't mean, this is we're going in a completely different direction, but that's a wholly different issue. But Christianity really has to be understood within this dimension of this. Now, the different, the Western Church wills a certain way. The Eastern Church has never reformed. They have never been the Reformation. Some people might say, like, oh, that's great, but no, because that's Caeso-Papism. Therefore, the emperors are always controlling. Because, yeah, but doesn't the Protestants do this also? Look at Henry VIII. Look how Henry VIII Erastianizes, or the state takes over the church, and that this is true in much of the thing. But then the English always had. If you look at the problem of the question of the ultramontane, if you go, the Catholic Church in the Western Europe always had this tension between strong kings. When you had a strong king who could challenge the church often caved in because the church didn't have the temporal means. And if you had a strong king who could unify the people, like the French and the Spanish and the English had, it's very difficult for the church to kind of do this. Now, even while they're Catholic, the Pope had to bargain with the Spanish king, had to bribe him, had to same thing with the French king. They had to cooperate. It's not that they could dictate to them. In fact, the opposite. What they ended up doing often is they let the king appoint his friends and allies as cardinals and bishops and cardinals. I mean, look at the case of England all the way before the period that we're talking about. Go back to Henry II and his appointment of Becket, Thomas of Becket, which was originally his boy, but then his boy kind of broke from him, and he ended up having to kill him. Right, had his knights kill his own bishop. Okay, we went down a real rabbit hole on that. I didn't want to go back. So we went today in class about the question of things. It was good papers. I was thinking about the social media thing, about that. That's why I talked about media and the way that the question of partisanship and the way technology shapes our political environment. And then responding to Mr. Lovell's, I hope Mr. Lovell does not turn off by the thing and liked it. We did that. How I understand this is through, one of the best books. Actually, you know who's good on this? The question of the development of the church and the state. It's Schmidt. Carl Schmitt's Dictatorship is a very good book to understand how the early chapters of the book deals with the way the Catholic thing. Is Jesus a fascist? No, Jesus is apolitical. Jesus is a king. Jesus is God. God is not a democracy. It's not a fascist. And what do you mean by fascist? Fascista just means the Roman symbol of authority. It's the fascista is the axe and the sticks to it, right? Is Jesus a zombie wizard guy? No, he's God and man. I'm a traditional, this idea that he is the Son of God. He's not a zombie. He's not going to be a zombie in that situation. To say he's resurrected, resurrection is not zombie. A zombie is brainless. A zombie is The Walking Dead. It is a brainless monster who's just feeding its innate hunger and things like this, and it's not consciousness. No, he doesn't turn it. Lovell, he does not turn into a zombie. That's laughable. He, in fact, ascends into heaven. He resurrects and transcends into heaven. Does not turn in. The resurrection is not zombies. The resurrection has nothing to do with turning into zombies. And you think that's the case, then that's a little silly. Now that is a little silly. That's Jesus want to eat your brain. I think not. But back. Here comes the Easter Bunny. Well, okay, yeah. I think you've been watching too much. You're sure it's the Easter Bunny and not the bunny and what is it? Holy Grail, and Monty Python's Holy Grail. That bunny, the bunny guarding the tunnel, and that you need the holy hand grenade of Antioch to knock out the Easter Bunny, the bunny. The bunny that's the monster who gobble up and kill all the knights. The Bible make people talk like idiots. No, actually, I have to really disagree with you. The Bible is actually great. Now, go read the Old Testament. Maybe people talk like idiots if you're saying that they only talk about... if you read the kind of silly Bible of the Way Bible and the hippie Jesus Bible, yeah, that's the idiots. If you actually read scripture, you come across as a realist. It's not that the Bible makes you idiots. And if you think that Bible makes you reading, people who actually read the Bible and take care of reading the Bible is one of the best, greatest books that teaches us about a lot of things. And people like even Nietzsche take the Bible seriously. People who oppose the Bible take the Bible seriously. Why? Because it's not because people are idiots of it. It's that they see the lessons in it. They prefer an alternative, or not necessarily prefer an alternative, but they see the logic of it. They deny the alternatives. People think that snakes could talk. Snakes could talk. Again, where you talk about Satan in the garden. That's a metaphor. Snakes can talk. Well, animals can communicate. Sorry, we just have to don't know it. We don't. I'm not sure snakes, how intelligent snakes are, but the idea that they cannot communicate. Maybe they can't communicate. Can they talk? You think Christians were bad? Then you know nothing about the pagan world. Yeah, there's a talking donkey. No, there isn't a talking donkey in the Bible. That's you don't know your Bible. Then talking donkey in the Bible, please. Book and verse. Put up or shut up. Book or verse. You can't give me the book and the verse, then you're lying. The pagan worlds was, in fact, Christianity and Judaism are very anti-superstition. They are actually the pagan and the you go to the pagan world, or you go to the Hindu world, the polytheistic world. They are they believe that the gods speak through signs and symbols all the time. That the chicken men of the ancient Romans, that the gods gave oracles all the time, and that there was oracles at everything, like a statue that rain will come down, a bird would fly over you. This would be a symbol or a message from the gods. So we're going to compare. If we're going to talk about this idea that I will, from the point of view of how the pagan world operated. And that world operated at the level of symbols and things. This is very much of things. Talking donkeys and wheel of fire, Bible stories. Again, give me verse and put up or shut up. Give me verse of what book in the Bible says this, and what thing. If you can't do that, then you're full shit. Archui Bizarre, Wheels of Absurd book. Okay, yes, Mr. John, keep on asserting a thing, keep on asserting it as true, not giving any evidence. Isn't that kind of a leftist thing to do? This is like the spaghetti monster people. That God is a big giant spaghetti monster, spaghetti thing. This is the absurdity of what I call fedora-wearing kind of atheists. This is silly. The Bible is not an absurd book. It's one of the deepestly insightful books. That even someone like Jordan Peterson, who is not necessarily, Numbers, the story about the talking donkey is from the Bible found in Numbers 20, 22, and 24. Okay, I'll verify that. It's that maybe the donkey gave him a message. What is the message of a donkey? Oh, don't do this. And talking animals. My Roman Catholic friends joke about this, that during Christmas they expect animals to talk during a Vigilia, right? The idea that Vigilia, the animals will talk. Well, what is that? What is the talk? Is the animals talking, or is that just merely a revelation of the divine? That could be just a message of the divine, but compared to, that is an absurd book. Okay. Or we're past my time. It's an hour and a half. Oh my God. It's been nice to be with you guys. I did my talk on this. As I said, I got 2 articles published last week, I think. One in Metatoscan and the other one in the Vogtland View. Both of these are dealing with the um, Philippe Benetton's work and writing. Um, I sound very superstitious. Well, okay. Superstitious. That's laughable. Philippe Benetton's work on this subject, on the question of regimes and the structure. Um, I don't know what to say about then the other book is on Benetton's book on Machiavelli that's out there, and the European Legacy, the journal, is going to be publishing my review of Benetton's Machiavelli book. So I'm in a good mood about that. We'll see how that happens. I need to correct my review of De La Mora for somebody. I should have been doing that a month ago, but it's been kind of a crazy January. And then last but not least, I need to do things. I'll be going April 2nd to the United States for a conference where I'll be giving my paper on the mechanisms of regime preservation in Aristotle Book 5 for the Midwest Political Science meeting. I hope that's going to be my big trip to America. Your God could not beat the chariot of iron. Okay, whatever. What else? What is the big thing? The big thing is that we continue Machiavelli. Machiavelli's discourses are going there. We're going into a thing on book 1. We're going into the chapters one by one. It's been interesting. I've been using the Tarkov and Mansfield translation. I can't use the De Alvarez because I have no copy. I have no right to publicly present it. I have a copy and I have a bounded copy. I bound it myself. But I'm not able to sell it or distribute it or anything because it's my own usage, my own use. And therefore there's a problem here. I could not put it online. So I couldn't use it. I would rather be using the Alvarez translation, but I have to use the one that's currently available. And of the available translations, Mansfield and Tarkov is still the best, even though there's real issues with it. There's really issues with it on certain things. And I think Michael Anton's comment about a year and a half ago about there needing to be an updated translation, which was one of the reasons why I tried to get De Alvarez to publish it. And I even had a good publisher. I had St. Augustine's being willing to do it. But then Leopold kind of like, no, I don't want to do it because, I don't want to step on Mansfield's toes. And if Mansfield's going to do a new translation, a new edition, which is not going to be doing a new edition, so I'm just kind of like, I just had to get out of it because I think that may have just done. I had a publisher really interested in it, about to do it. They were agreeing. They were going to agree to even do it without the Alvarez doing a proper introduction. I'm just, it's sad. I'm actually sad about that edition that should be out there. So I'm doing the discourses. That's been the big discourse thing. What else? What is left? What I've been reading, I've been looking at this new book by Jacob. I'm sorry, I've been wanting this book for a while. It came out. I finally had enough money to buy it. Jacob Buber, State and Nations and Weber. What's interesting here is the chapter on race in Weber, which even though Buber does not know Vogelin, but he makes the case of the chapter of race where he ties race with class and tribe in Weber's Economy and Society, and makes the case that Weber talks about the question of race. This suggests, if this is true, the argument here about the role of race in here might show that Vogelin may have an intersection with Weber here. So my friend, my old party guy, what's his name, Corlitz asked me about some last week's things. He put up a question on Vogelin's books on political philosophy. He's been reading Sandos's book, The Vogelian Revolution, which seems good. It is a good book. I responded to him on that note, and I gave him a list of papers. And then he looked at another thing that Corlitz said was academic agent made an interesting video on Trump's Davos speech. It looks like Trump intends to introduce some significant changes, but how much will prove possible to implement? I think that's a big question. The Trump question is going to be a very interesting one. I'm not so. I think AA was kind of a black pilled for a long while, but I think what's happening is the effects of what Trump's been doing has kind of not necessarily white pilled him, but kind of moderated, been unblack pilling him a little bit. And on the other topic is the recent book about Pierre Menat's political philosophy, about Joseph Wood's book, and that's a good book. I would recommend looking at my old pal's Trevor Shelley's book, where he looks at Menat and Menat's treatment of Montesquieu and Tocqueville in this question. So I think the Wood book is a very good book. It's expensive. I got a PDF version of it by a friend. Someone scanned it and sent it to me. Okay, I might have to go buy it. It's expensive. And that is, Menat is a very interesting fellow. I've always been a Menat fan. I have a problem with his political form, as people who know me here knows this on this question. I have friends like Dan Mahoney, who's very close to Menat and even Baton. I'm more interested right now in looking at Gachet's new book, The Knot of the Democratic Knot. I've been reading it. It's in French, so it's difficult to kind of get it through. I'd like to maybe get a better e-copy of it. E-copy I have doesn't allow me to do any searches of it, so I can't go searching it. It's been like really annoying in that sense. I would like a copy that I didn't have to go through a web server, like an ebook reader. I like to go on text and then do text searches of certain things of the French, because I think that it's a good way to do kind of like look for certain patterns in the book that I think are there, and it's going to be a good. I think the Gachet's book on the Democratic Knot is it's going to be a good summary of what's the current the current crisis of neoliberal democracy, which is worth looking at, and it's tied to the question of the religion, the political theological question. So I'm going to stop here. We're at the hour and a half over. So that's it. Today they're releasing the week, I think the third chapter of Discourse, Machiavelli's Discourses, been released at 6 today. So it's a half hour already over. So we take care. Have a good day. We'll see you next time. If you'd like to thing it, so far we have had 5 likes. So okay, great. If you like it, hit the like button, please. It helps the algorithm. Share it after this. If you're not watching it live, hit the like button also. If you've put and you put comments on comments, you don't have to follow the live stream comments because they are there and they are amusing in that sense. But please put some comments or questions on the live stream on the post live stream thing, and if you watch it, please, I will respond to people, and like I've been responding to James. He posts usually a couple days late and gets to watch these things not on the same time. Another thing is that want to follow me on social media. My social media links are below in the notes, the card. To know about me as a researcher and a scholar, you can check out my academic social media to see my research and stuff like that. And you can do so through you want to help me do what I do, you can do it through Patreon or through Subscribestar, or you can buy one of my books through the normal means. Okay. Well, that's it. That's good. I hope you all have a good Friday and weekend, and I wish you the best day on Friday and a good weekend. See you next week at the next live stream. Okay. Take care. Bye bye. Have a good one. See you.